December 16th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest. I was 21 years old, and I could not stop my hands from shaking. The cold had nothing to do with it. My fingers were locked around the handset of an SCR 300 radio, and the metal was so frozen it had started to burn through my wool glove. I could feel the skin sticking. If I pulled away too fast, I would leave part of my palm on that metal, but I did not pull away. I kept holding it, because 400 men in the trees around me were about to die, and the only thing standing between them and a German tank column was my voice. 3 days earlier, I had been a radio operator who fixed washing machines before the war. I knew how motors sounded when they were about to fail. I knew the difference between a bearing going bad and a belt about to snap. I could hear patterns in static that other men ignored. The Army did not care about any of that. They cared that I could carry 28 pounds of radio equipment on my back and speak clearly under pressure. So they strapped the SCR 300 to my shoulders, handed me a rifle I barely knew how to use, and told me I was now the most important man in the company. We had walked into position before dawn. The snow was not the clean kind you see in photographs. It was a thin crust over frozen mud, walked on too many times, stamped down by boots and vehicle tracks until it looked like dirty ice. The road we were supposed to hold twisted between fir trees so thick you could not see more than 50 yards in any direction. 400 men spread out along a perimeter that was supposed to protect that road. Machine gun teams, mortar crews, riflemen in shallow holes scraped into ground that was more rock than soil. And me, sitting in a foxhole with a radio that hummed against my spine and an antenna that kept brushing the branches overhead every time the wind picked up. The order came down an hour after we dug in. Radio silence. The enemy had mobile listening posts. If we talked too much, they would hear us. If we talked too long, they would find us. The lieutenant said it with that slow, careful voice officers use when they want to make sure you understand they are serious. The sergeant came by later and leaned over my hole. He tapped the handset twice with 2 fingers. "No cowboy stuff," he said. "You light us up, you kill us all." I understood. I kept the radio on, volume low, just enough to hear if someone called. Most of the time there was only static. Sometimes a faint voice would flicker through from another unit, too far away to make out words. Just the rhythm of another human being, somewhere out there in the same cold pushing sound into a machine and hoping someone was listening. The first sign that something was wrong came in the early afternoon. I felt it before I heard it, a low vibration in the mud under my knees. My canteen started tapping against the stock of my rifle in a steady rhythm that did not match my breathing. The men around me went still without anyone saying a word. We all knew that feel. Tracks. Heavy ones. The sound followed maybe 10 seconds later, not the nervous rattle of trucks or the high whine of half-tracks. This was deeper, a grinding mechanical thunder that did not care about mud or snow or anything in its path. It rolled through the trees like a slow-moving earthquake, and it did not stop. Someone down the line fired a single shot. It cracked through the forest and hung there for a moment, unanswered. Then the world came apart. The German tank appeared at the bend in the road like something out of a nightmare. 1 second there was only snow and trees. The next, there it was. Massive, dark, armor streaked with frozen mud. The barrel was already turning toward us. I did not need a recognition chart to know what I was looking at. That was a Tiger. 56 tons of steel that our standard bazooka could not hurt from the front. And it was not alone. I could hear at least 2 more behind it, engines snarling, tracks chewing up the frozen road. The Tiger fired. The sound was not loud. It was physical. A punch to the chest that knocked the air out of my lungs. A tree 30 yards to my left exploded into splinters. Snow and bark rained down. Men screamed, not words, just noise. The kind of sound that comes out when the body forgets how to make language. Our machine guns opened up. Rifles cracked. The Germans replied with a brutal, efficient roar. Bullets hissed through the branches overhead. Explosions walked up and down the line, each one throwing dirt and frozen mud into the air. I pressed myself against the side of my foxhole and tried to make my body smaller. That was when the field telephone died. A runner slid into my hole with the handset in his hand. The wire trailed behind him, cut somewhere under the snow. His face was white except for the mud. He did not say anything. He just looked at me, then at the radio, then back at me. Then he was gone, scrambling back toward the lieutenant's position. I stared at the dead telephone wire. Then I looked at the radio. The pilot light on the panel was still glowing. The set was live, ready, waiting for me to pick up the handset and speak. But I had my orders. Radio silence. Do not transmit unless we are under direct assault and cut off from all other communication. We were under direct assault. The telephone line was dead, but the order was still there, sitting in my head like a second voice. If you transmit, the enemy will hear you. They will find you. They will kill everyone here. The battle was no longer separate sounds. It was a single crushing weight. Every explosion pushed the air like a fist. Time stopped making sense. Moments where nothing happened seemed to last forever. Moments where 3 different guns fired and 2 men died occurred all at once with no space to think between them. I heard someone screaming my name. I looked up. A soldier I knew, a kid from Ohio named Miller, was crawling toward my hole. His left leg was dragging behind him. There was blood, a lot of it. The snow under him was turning red. He reached the edge of my foxhole and grabbed my arm. "Get help," he said. His voice was high and thin. "Get help now." I could not look at his leg. I looked at his face instead. He was 19, maybe 20. He had shown me a photograph of his girl back home 3 days ago. Blonde hair. Bright smile. He was going to marry her when the war ended. "I will get help," I said. He let go of my arm and tried to crawl away. He made it maybe 5 feet before another explosion threw him sideways. When the smoke cleared, he was not moving anymore. I vomited. There was nothing in my stomach except water and fear, but my body tried anyway. I leaned over the side of the foxhole and heaved until my throat burned. When I looked up, I saw another body, this one closer. I recognized the helmet, Sergeant Kowalski. He had been the one who told me not to light us up. Now he was face down in the snow, with the back of his uniform torn open. I could see bone. I could see things that were supposed to be inside a body. The smell hit me a second later, cordite, burning wood, and something else, something sweet and wrong. The smell of a man turned inside out. I looked at the radio. My hands were still shaking. I pulled off my right glove with my teeth. The cold stabbed at my fingers immediately. I picked up the handset. The metal was so cold it felt like it was melting into my palm. I thought about my mother. She believed in clear lines between right and wrong. She believed that if you did what you were told, if you followed the rules, everything would work out. I thought about the priest in our neighborhood who had said that sometimes doing nothing was also a choice. 400 men in these woods, 400 mothers, 400 families who believed their sons were coming home. And then I thought about the men I would never see, the men on some other road, in some other forest, who were about to pay the price for what I was about to do, because radio signals do not just disappear, they travel, they get heard, and the enemy was very good at drawing lines on maps. Another shell landed, close, so close that I felt the heat on my face. Dirt rained into the foxhole, something wet hit my cheek. I wiped it away and looked at my hand. Blood. I did not know whose. I pressed the transmit switch. My voice came out steady. I did not recognize it. It was older, calmer, like someone else had taken over my throat. I gave our call sign, our grid coordinates, enemy armor on the road, Tiger tanks, at least 3, infantry support, request immediate fire mission, danger close. Each word was a nail. Each number was a flare in the dark sky, screaming, "Here we are. Come kill us." I released the switch. The forest kept screaming. The tanks kept firing. Men kept dying. The radio hissed softly in my hand. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice crackled through. Faint, broken by distance, but human. "Roger. Rounds on the way. Stand by for adjustment." I had done it. Help was coming. The guns behind us had heard. They were loading shells, turning cranks, preparing to drop fire on the road, and the tanks and the Germans clustered around them. I had also done something else. I had broken radio silence. I had sent a clear, strong signal into the air, and somewhere out there, in a truck or a bunker or a camouflaged position, a German operator had just heard me. I kept the handset pressed to my ear. In the background of the static, I heard something else, faint, almost buried, but unmistakable. A voice, speaking German. They were on the frequency. They had heard me. And now they were doing exactly what I knew they would do, measuring the bearing, drawing lines, finding the intersection. I thought about Miller lying in the snow with his leg torn open. I thought about Kowalski with his back ripped apart. I thought about the 400 men around me who might live because I had just spoken. And then I thought about the men I had just killed, the ones I would never see, the ones whose names I would never know, the ones who were about to die because a German artillery battery now had fresh coordinates, and those coordinates led to an American position that had been silent until 3 seconds ago. I heard the German voice again, clearer this time. They were triangulating. They were plotting. Someone else was about to die because of me. I sat in that frozen foxhole with the handset pressed to my ear and the antenna scraping the winter sky, and I understood that there was no version of this war where I walked away clean. There was no path through the next few minutes, the next few hours, the next few decades that did not end with blood on my hands. The only question was whose. The artillery came 16 minutes after I transmitted. I know because I counted every second, sitting in that frozen hole with the handset pressed against my ear, listening to the static and the German voices underneath it, counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. When you are waiting to find out if you just saved 400 men or killed them all, time stops being something that flows. It becomes something you have to measure, second by second, to prove it is still moving. The first shells screamed overhead like freight trains tearing through the sky. I heard the whistles growing louder, closer, until my entire body wanted to curl into a ball and disappear into the earth. Then the impacts. Not sounds. Earthquakes. The ground bucked under me. Trees snapped like toothpicks. Fire and smoke and metal fragments tore through the air where the German tanks had been. I heard screaming. German screaming. High and thin and desperate. The kind of sound that does not care about language or uniform or which side you are fighting for. It is just the noise a human throat makes when the body is being destroyed and the brain has not caught up yet. The tiger that had been grinding toward us stopped. Smoke poured from the engine compartment. Another shell landed directly behind it, throwing mud and snow and pieces of men into the air. The infantry that had been using the tank for cover scattered. Some ran, some crawled, some did not move at all. Our machine guns opened up again. This time the Germans were the ones pinned. This time we were the ones with the advantage. Men were cheering in the foxholes around me. Someone yelled that we got them, we got the bastards. I did not cheer. I kept listening to the radio. The German voices were still there, fainter now, but still measuring, still drawing their lines. The battle lasted another 40 minutes. By the time it ended, 2 of the Tigers were burning and the 3rd had retreated. German bodies lay scattered along the road. Our perimeter held. 400 men were still alive because I had broken radio silence and called down fire on an enemy that would have overrun us in another 20 minutes. The lieutenant found me after the shooting stopped. His face was black with soot and his eyes were too wide. He grabbed my shoulder and shook it. "You did it," he said. "You saved us." I nodded. I did not trust my voice yet. He moved on to check the other positions. Men were climbing out of their holes, looking at the burning tanks, at the dead Germans in the snow. Someone started laughing, not because anything was funny, just because he was still breathing and his brain did not know what else to do. I sat in my foxhole and stared at the radio. The German voices were gone now. The frequency was quiet. Just static and wind and the distant sound of our own guns falling silent. I had saved 400 men. That was real. I could see them walking around, alive, talking, reloading their weapons, checking on the wounded. But somewhere else, someone was counting different bodies. 2 days later, a captain I had never seen before walked into our position. He was clean. Too clean. Staff officer, rear echelon. He carried a clipboard and wore a look on his face that made my stomach turn to ice before he even opened his mouth. He found the lieutenant first. They talked for maybe 5 minutes. I watched from 30 yards away. I watched the lieutenant's face change. I watched his shoulders drop. I watched him look at the ground and not come back up. Then the captain left and the lieutenant walked over to my foxhole. He sat down on the edge without asking. He did not look at me. He looked at his boots. There was a listening post, he said. 3 kilometers east of here. 40 men, radio operators, intelligence guys. They were monitoring German communications. I felt something cold spread through my chest. When you transmitted, the lieutenant said, the Germans triangulated your signal. They got a bearing. Then they looked for other signals in the area. They found the listening post. He stopped talking. The silence lasted maybe 10 seconds. It felt like an hour. "Artillery?" I asked. The lieutenant nodded. "Direct hit. 40 men. All of them." I did not say anything. There was nothing to say. My mouth was full of ash. The captain said, "You did the right thing." The lieutenant continued. He said it was a tactical decision, 400 against 40. The math works out. I looked at him, at his soot-stained face, at his eyes that would not meet mine. "Does the math work out?" I asked. He did not answer. He just stood up and walked away. That night, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Miller dragging his shattered leg through the snow. Every time I tried to push that image away, it was replaced by 40 men I had never seen, sitting in a listening post 3 kilometers away, hearing German shells coming in and knowing they had maybe 3 seconds left to live. I tried to tell myself that the captain was right. 400 lives for 40. That was a trade any commander would make. That was war. That was math. But math does not bleed. Math does not have a mother waiting for a telegram. 3 days later, they moved us to a rear area for rest and refit. We had been on the line for 2 weeks straight. Men needed sleep. Equipment needed maintenance. The dead needed to be counted and reported. I was walking between 2 tents when I saw him, a soldier with his right arm in a sling and bandages wrapped around his head. He was sitting on an ammunition crate staring at nothing. There was something about the way he sat. Something hollow. I walked over without thinking. "You need something?" I asked. He looked up at me. His eyes were gray, empty. "You Keller?" he asked. I nodded. "You the radio guy, the one who called the fire mission near Bastogne?" It was not a question. I nodded anyway. He stared at me for a long time. Then he spoke. "I was at the listening post, 3 clicks east. 40 of us monitoring German traffic." My throat closed up. "I was outside taking a piss when the shells came in," he said. "That is the only reason I am alive." I was 20 feet from the bunker. The first shell hit dead center, collapsed the whole thing. By the time I got back, there was nothing left but smoke and screaming. He paused. His good hand was shaking. 37 men died instantly. 3 more died while I was trying to dig them out. I could hear them under the rubble, calling for help, calling for their mothers. I could not reach them. I tried. For 2 hours, I tried. He looked at me with those empty gray eyes. "The Germans knew where we were because they heard your transmission. They got a bearing off your signal. Then they searched the area for other radio sources. They found us." I wanted to say something. "I am sorry. I did not know. I had no choice." But every word felt like a lie before it even reached my mouth. "You saved 400 men," he said. "I know that. The captain told me. 400 for 40. Good math." His voice cracked on the last word. "But you did not hear them screaming under that rubble. You did not pull pieces of your friends out of the dirt. You did not close the eyes of a kid from Ohio who kept asking for his mom until he stopped asking for anything." He stood up. He was shorter than me, thinner, wounded. But when he looked at me, I felt like I was the one who needed bandages. "I am not saying you were wrong," he said. "I am just saying that when you go to sleep tonight, you remember that 40 men died so 400 could live, and you decide if that makes you a hero or something else." Then he walked away. I stood there between the tents with the winter sun going down and the snow turning gray around my boots, and I understood that I would never be clean again. A week later, they gave me a medal, Bronze Star for Valor. The ceremony was in a muddy field with 200 soldiers standing at attention. A colonel I had never met read the citation out loud. It said I had shown exceptional courage under fire. It said I had called in artillery despite extreme danger to my own position. It said I had saved the lives of numerous American soldiers. It did not say anything about the 40 men in the listening post. The colonel pinned the medal to my chest. He shook my hand. He said I should be proud. I stood there at attention with the medal on my uniform and 400 men clapping, and I felt nothing. Not pride, not shame, just a heavy gray emptiness that filled my chest and would not leave. After the ceremony, soldiers came up to thank me. They shook my hand. They clapped me on the back. One of them said I was a hero. Another said I should get a drink to celebrate. I went back to my tent instead. I took off my uniform and looked at the medal. It was small, bronze. It had a star on it and a ribbon. It weighed maybe 2 ounces. It felt like it weighed 200 pounds. I put it at the bottom of my pack, under my spare socks and my mess kit. I did not want to look at it. I did not want to remember that it existed, but I could feel it there anyway. Every time I picked up my pack, every time I moved, a small, hard shape pressing against my back, reminding me of what I had done. The war ended 4 months later. Germany surrendered. Japan surrendered. We went home. There were parades and celebrations and people waving flags in the streets. Women kissed soldiers they did not know. Children asked to touch our uniforms. Everyone wanted to hear stories about the war. I did not tell any stories. I went back to fixing washing machines. I married a girl from my neighborhood. I had children. I taught them to ride bicycles and throw baseballs, and I never once mentioned the radio or the artillery or the 40 men who died because I wanted to save 400. The medal stayed at the bottom of a drawer. I did not display it. I did not talk about it. My wife asked me once what I did to earn it. I told her it was not important. She never asked again. But every night when I closed my eyes, I was back in that foxhole with the handset pressed to my ear and a German voice crackling through the static. Every night I made the same choice. Every night 40 men died, and every night I woke up wondering if I had done the right thing or if I had just been a coward who chose the 400 lives I could see over the 40 lives I could not. The math said I was a hero. The medal said I was brave. The army said I had saved lives. But the soldier with the empty gray eyes had said something else. He had said I should remember the 40 men screaming under the rubble. He had said I should decide if saving 400 made me a hero or something else. I decided I was both, and that meant I was neither. I am 81 years old, and I am dying. The doctors use softer words. Stage 4, inoperable, palliative care. But I know what those words mean. I have maybe 6 weeks. Maybe less. The cancer started in my lungs and spread to places the doctors list in calm voices while they avoid looking at my eyes. Liver, bones, lymph nodes. My body is shutting down one piece at a time, and there is nothing anyone can do except manage the pain. I do not mind dying. I have been tired for a long time. The hospice room is small and clean. White walls. A single window that looks out at a parking lot. A television I never turn on, a chair where the nurses sit when they check my vitals. There is a call button on a cord next to my bed, but I do not use it unless the pain becomes too much to breathe through. I do not want to be a burden. I have been a burden long enough. My daughter visits twice a week. She brings flowers and magazines and tries to fill the silence with stories about her children, my grandchildren, who are grown now with lives of their own. She talks too much. She always did when she was nervous. I listen and nod, and sometimes I hold her hand. She does not ask about the war. She learned a long time ago not to ask. My wife died 6 years ago. Heart attack. Quick. She did not suffer. I was grateful for that. We had been married for 54 years, and I never told her about the 40 men. I never told her about the listening post, or the soldier with the empty gray eyes, or the nights when I woke up hearing German voices crackling through static that was not there. She knew something was wrong. She always knew, but she never pushed. She would just hold my hand in the dark and wait until my breathing slowed down. She was a good woman, better than I deserved. The medal is still in the drawer of my bedside table at home. My daughter found it a few weeks ago when she was packing up my things to move me here. She asked if I wanted it brought to the hospice. I said no. She looked at me for a long moment and then put it back in the drawer without another word. I have been in the hospice for 2 weeks when he comes. It is a Tuesday afternoon, gray sky, cold rain against the window. I am half asleep when I hear the knock. Soft, hesitant, not a nurse. Nurses do not knock. They just come in. Come in, I say. The door opens and a man steps inside. 30s, maybe 40. Dark hair going gray at the temples. He is wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, and he is holding a baseball cap in his hands, turning it over and over like he does not know what to do with it. Mr. Keller, he asks. I nod. He steps closer. There is something in his face, something nervous, like he is not sure he should be here. My name is David Pritchard, he says. I know you do not know me, but I think you knew my grandfather. I wait. My heart is beating faster, but I do not know why yet. His name was James Pritchard, the man says. He was a radio operator, died in December 1944. Ardennes, German artillery strike. The room goes very quiet. I can hear the rain against the window. I can hear my own breathing. I can hear nothing else. He was stationed at a listening post. The man continues. 3 kilometers east of Bastogne. Him and 39 other men. They were monitoring German communications when the artillery came in. Direct hit. My grandfather was killed instantly. That is what the telegram said. He stops. He is looking at me now. Really looking. I did some research, he says. Talked to some historians. Read some after-action reports. Found out that listening post was hit because the Germans were triangulating an American radio transmission. Someone called in a fire mission, broke radio silence. The Germans tracked the signal and then searched the area for other radio sources. They found my grandfather. I try to speak. My throat is too dry. I swallow. Try again. I am sorry, I say. He shakes his head. I am not here for an apology, he says. I am here because I need to understand something. He sits down in the chair next to my bed, the chair where the nurses sit. He leans forward. His hands are still turning the baseball cap over and over. The reports say the fire mission saved 400 men, he says. 400 American soldiers who would have been overrun by German tanks if someone had not called in artillery support. My grandfather died, so those 400 could live. That is what the reports say. He pauses. I need to know if that is true, he says. I need to know if my grandfather died for a reason, or if he died because someone made a mistake. I look at him, at his dark hair and his nervous hands, and the way his voice cracks just slightly on the word mistake. He looks like his grandfather. Not exactly, but close enough that I can see the ghost of a man I never met in the face of the man sitting next to my bed. It is true, I say. The fire mission saved 400 men. If I had not called it in, they would have been overrun in less than 20 minutes. He nods slowly. But it also killed my grandfather, he says. Yes. He looks down at his hands. At the baseball cap. Did you know, he asks, when you made the call? Did you know it would get them killed? I think about lying. I think about saying no. I think about making it easier for both of us. But I am 81 years old, and I am dying, and I do not have time for lies anymore. I knew it was possible, I say. We had been ordered to maintain radio silence because the Germans had mobile listening posts. They could triangulate our signals. I knew that when I picked up the handset. I knew that if I transmitted, someone might hear it. Someone might trace it. Someone might die. Why did you do it, he asks. Because 400 men were about to die, I say, and I could save them. He looks at me for a long time. The rain keeps falling against the window. A nurse walks past in the hallway outside. Somewhere down the hall, a television is playing. My grandfather had a wife, he says quietly. My grandmother. She was 22 when he died, pregnant. She did not know it yet. My father was born 6 months later, never met his dad, never heard his voice, never got to throw a baseball with him or ask him for advice or tell him he loved him. He stops. His voice is shaking now. My grandmother never remarried. 58 years. She wore her wedding ring every single day until she died. She kept his letters in a box under her bed. She talked about him like he was still alive, like he was just away for a while and would be coming home any day. He wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. I grew up hearing stories about a grandfather I never met, a hero, a man who died serving his country. And I believed those stories because what else was I supposed to believe? He looks at me. But he did not die serving his country, did he? He died because you needed to save 400 men, and his life was the price. I do not have an answer for that. I have spent 60 years looking for one, and I still do not have it. I am sorry, I say again. It is the only thing I can think to say. He shakes his head. Stop apologizing, he says. I did not come here for that. Then why did you come? He leans back in the chair. He puts the baseball cap on his knee. He looks at the ceiling for a moment, then back at me. Because I needed to see you, he says. I needed to see the man who killed my grandfather, and I needed to see if you were a hero or a coward or just a scared kid who made an impossible choice. Which one am I ask. He looks at me for a long time. All three, he says finally. We sit in silence. The rain falls. The television plays down the hall. My heart is beating too fast and my hands are shaking, and I cannot tell if it is the cancer or the conversation. 400 men lived, he says quietly. They went home. They married. They had children. Some of those children had children. There are probably 1,000 people alive today because you made that call. 1,000 people who would never have existed if those 400 men had died in the Ardennes. He pauses. My grandfather is not one of them. My grandmother lived alone for 58 years. My father grew up without a dad. I never got to meet the man everyone said I looked like. Another pause. But 1,000 other people got to live, and I do not know if that makes what you did right or wrong. I just know that it happened, and someone had to carry it. He stands up. He puts the baseball cap back on his head. Thank you for telling me the truth, he says. He walks to the door. He opens it. Then he stops and looks back at me. For what it is worth, he says, I do not think you're a coward. I think you're a man who made an impossible choice and then spent 60 years paying for it. And I think that is a kind of courage, too. Then he is gone. The door closes softly behind him. I am alone again in the white room with the rain falling against the window. That night, I cannot sleep. The pain is worse than usual, but I do not press the call button. I lie in the dark and stare at the ceiling and think about David Pritchard and his grandmother who wore a wedding ring for 58 years. I think about the 400 men I saved. I try to remember their faces, but I cannot. They are blurs, shapes, helmets and rifles and voices that have faded into static. I think about the 40 men I killed. I have never forgotten them, not once in 60 years. I see them every night, 40 ghosts sitting in a bunker 3 kilometers away, hearing the whistle of incoming shells, having just enough time to know they are about to die. I reach for the drawer next to my bed. My hands are shaking. The morphine makes me clumsy. It takes 3 tries to get the drawer open. Inside is a small wooden box. I brought it with me when my daughter moved me here. She does not know what is inside. No one does. I open the box. Inside is a telegraph key, Morse code, the kind radio operators used during the war. I took it from a supply depot in '45 when we were packing up to go home. I do not know why. I just needed something to hold on to, something that proved it was real. I lift the key out of the box. It is heavier than I remember, brass and wood and 60 years of weight that has nothing to do with metal. I set it on my chest. I rest my fingers on the key the way I used to rest them on the handset of the SCR 300, and then I start tapping. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short SOS. I tap it again, slower this time. My fingers are too weak to make real sound. The key barely moves, but I can feel the rhythm. Dit-dit-dit, da-da-da, dit-dit-dit. I am sending a message into the dark, into the empty air, into the frequency that has been silent for 60 years. I am asking for help that will never come. I tap it again and again. My fingers are shaking. Tears are running down my face, but I do not stop. 3 short, 3 long. 3 short, I am sorry, I am sorry, I am sorry. The frequency is silent. No one answers. No one ever will. But I keep tapping anyway, because it is the only thing I know how to do. Because 60 years ago, I picked up a handset and spoke into the darkness, and 40 men died and 400 men lived, and I have been trying to balance that equation ever since. The math does not balance. It never will. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. My fingers stop moving. The key is still. The room is quiet except for the rain against the window. I close my eyes. The frequency is silent now. And maybe that is mercy.